And my husband said to me, you know what? We should really look into getting you disability insurance because if God forbid something happens to you, he said, I would have to take a leave from work and head up the family. Really, we didn't have anyone else involved in our sort of support network. And I said, well, that makes sense to me. So we filled in all the forms and the rigmarole, of applying for insurance. And I was summarily rejected by the insurance agent. He said to me, I don't understand. You're just a housewife.
Hey y'all, in this episode, I really enjoyed talking with Lori Sugarman-Li and her son Tyson, who's a teenager. It was really cool getting to talk to both of them about her book that came out last year and how they look at invisible labor around their home. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's conversation. I actually recently had Lori Sugarman-Li's book brought into my preschooler's school, and I got to actually read some of it in front of the preschoolers. Sadly, my phone died and lost the video clip of me answering questions from children, preschoolers, talking about like, hey, it's doing chores, doing cleaning things. Like, do your mom and dad do that? Does that work? Do you do that sometimes? Do you help pick up your toys? And like, is that hard work doing that sometimes? Yeah. So it was really cool getting to do her book in my child's preschool class. And so I really hope you guys enjoy this. It's the first time I've had a teenager on. And so Lori has been is a fellow Fair Play facilitator, and I wanted to have her on because I'm a big fan of her work, and we've both worked with couples where she's worked with the woman, I've worked with the man. So it's been really cool working alongside her and getting to meet her for the first time in person in Mom 2.0 this year. So hope you guys enjoy this. Hi, my name's Zach. I'm your favorite mental load coach. I teach men, sometimes women, to better understand invisible labor. When it comes to domestic labor, mental load, emotional labor, I got you covered. I teach men emotional literacy and fluency. I bring guests on for us to have conversations to improve our understanding of these concepts and these topics. Sometimes we're going to agree, sometimes we're going to disagree, but the main goal is for us to improve those conversations. Welcome to the Zach Thinks Your podcast. And hey, if this is not your first time on here, I kindly invite you to leave a review or hit the follow button if you haven't already. Look forward to sharing this today. Today I have with me Lori Sugarman-Li, along with her son Tyson, who's 14. The reason I wanted to originally have Lori on, and she was gassing me up about Tyson, was that when she came out with her book a bit over a year ago, and she was, her book's a children's book talking about the invisible labor at home and how to kind of reframe the way that we see domestic labor. Since then, I've seen a lot of videos of the two of you talking about mental load, talking about invisible labor on screen. I think doing a great job showcasing for other people what these conversations can look like with teenagers, which I know is a very specific area for a lot of parents are starting to go through those parts where like your teenager is becoming an adult, going through adolescence. Mm-hmm. And it's like a huge opportunity for where they can really start picking up much more of the invisible labor. So thank you two for coming on. I'm looking forward to having you guys flex a little bit of like what this learning experience has looked like for Lori, you teaching invisible labor in your home, and Tyson, what your experience has been like, and or how and or where you apply it in other places in your life. So I wanted to start off with this, Lori, is what was some of the inspiration specifically for this book? I think there's probably a lot of ways you could have written the material and put it together. Why a children's book?
Well, the story started quite a few years ago when I had an encounter upon moving to the U.S. We had to redo all of our foundational family documents, wills and insurance and all of that stuff. And at the time, I was focused on my unpaid career, heading up my family and all of our community involvements. We had just moved from London and we're sort of starting fresh again. We didn't have any safety net or network of family and friends here yet. And my husband said to me, you know what? We should really look into getting you disability insurance because if God forbid something happens to you, he said, I would have to take a leave from work and head up the family. Really, we didn't have anyone else involved in our sort of support network. And I said, well, that makes sense to me. So we filled in all the forms and the rigmarole, of applying for insurance. And I was summarily rejected by the insurance agent. He said to me, I don't understand. You're just a housewife. Why do you need disability insurance? If something happens to you, there's no loss. And of course, he was referring to a financial loss. And it was that sort of smoke coming out of my ears, flames coming out of my nose moment where I realized that this job that I had been doing, I did have a 15-year paid career as a marketing strategist, which I loved, and then shifted to unpaid work and the care economy when our family started moving internationally in support of my husband's job. And I was thriving in it and loved it and certainly felt appreciated by my own family and community. But what this insurance agent really alerted me to was like the sort of systematic societal devaluing of this work. And I started writing about it, studying about it, certainly reading a lot. I read Fair Play. I took a course at Stanford called Motherhood and Work. And the more I learned about the sort of the issues that our society was facing at a government level, at a corporate level, and at the household level, right, with couples who were struggling with division of labor and a challenge with the sort of the value of domestic labor, I was like, oh my God, like I have to be a part of this conversation and I want to impact change. But again, at the time, I was a stay-at-home mom. I didn't have a platform. I didn't even have a LinkedIn profile. So the first thing I did actually was get onto LinkedIn. And I was like, if I expect other people to see what I'm doing as work, I have to be able to articulate it. So I made a profile on LinkedIn and I really challenged myself to say how I've grown, what I've contributed, why this period of my life has been so meaningful. And I started engaging with a lot of people who were doing similar work. And I thought, what can my contribution here be? I don't have a platform to impact corporate government policy, but I was super involved as a full-time caregiver of my kids and very involved in their schools and in children's charities globally. And I thought, you know what? I can talk to kids. And if we want to impact adult behavior, we have to show our kids a better way. It starts from the ground up. Very inspired to write this book, which, yes, is a book for children, but I hope that it can really inspire powerful family conversations at any family stage.
And for the women listening to this, which I know it's mostly women listening to this, I shared last year that I think that it's a great book for kind of like side door talking about mental load with or domestic labor with your partner.
Start
reading it with your kid, and then they're forced to grapple with the concepts in it too.
Right.
Tyson, when you were watching her put together the book, how much of, now I know like there's a caricature of you and your sibling on there.
Yeah, on the cover there is.
How much of the creation of that book were you a part of in terms of like, I imagine there are a lot of moments where your mom like kind of brought things to your attention, like, does this make sense? Or like, how much of the conception would you say you were a part of in being able to shape how it landed on yourself and people your age?
Yeah, so I think when my mom was writing this book, I think one of the most important aspects to her was to make sure that it would make sense to kids like myself. So first of all, she read me pretty much every draft of it. She was like, does this make sense? Does this make sense? And she really wanted to make sure, I think you wanted to make sure it resonated with kids. So like you said, that the kids would be able to read it with their parents. I think that's a very important aspect of the book.
You were really my inspiration. My two boys that I'm raising were really my inspiration for starting this conversation. And of course, it is a conversation that they hear on repeat in the house. But you know, I want to make sure that the energy is right around it. It's not about a book that's like telling kids to do their chores. It's about understanding that this is inextricable to family wellness for everybody. And it's reshaping the concept of chores as acts of gratitude. And so I think I just watched a video where you're talking about, practice what you preach, right? And so I actually really had to build that muscle for myself of reframing this work of home, which, let's be honest, it's a heavy load. Laundry is unending, right? But if we can sort of have this patina of gratitude on everything, where I pick up their grass-stained soccer uniform, and instead of just feeling totally overwhelmed by it, I can just think for a second like, oh my God, I love watching them play so much. you know? And like, if there's ice cream on Tyson City, which there happens to be right now, it's like
Shots fired.
you know, this is our life. We went for ice cream, you know, how fun and lucky and everything. And so, and I'm not suggesting that this is always easy to do, but if you can inject these little moments, and I think that's what I've been really trying to model for Tyson and my other son, Damon, around the house, because we're not going to change the word chore. It is what it is. And the definition of chore is like dreaded, repetitive, unappealing behavior, difficult behavior, which is unfortunate for this work that we do, which is really nourishing and nurturing our loved ones and protecting our investments like our home and our car and adhering to community and municipal standards. But if we can just shift our energy around it a little bit, then it becomes less daunting. It feels less heavy. The other thing, Tyson, that you can maybe talk about is I made a big shift. I used to be one of those moms who would do everything during the day when they were gone so that when they came home, everything was perfect.
Immaculate,
when my husband got home from work, everything was perfect. And my revelation was, they're never going to learn anything if they don't see the wheels in motion. Yes, please.
So I just want to add that when I was really young, like my mom just said, I would come home and my laundry would be folded and I'd have like maybe a snack waiting. But I think it's better for kids to learn it easy way than learn it the hard way when, for example, they move out and then they have to manage a home or space on their own, and then you realize who's here to fold the laundry. Like, I think it's better to learn when you're a kid, for example, and it's better for the parents to show their kids the way on how to take care of a household so they can learn when they're young.
Fostering
that's
independence.
Something that's really helped me.
It's a huge part of it.
Yeah, as much as I love the way that my mom raised me, I don't think I really did my laundry until I got to college. So I definitely, I have yet to really be good at laundry because I think I might call it like learned helplessness around it. Because there are a lot of times where she might have said, yeah, I'll do that for you without any conversation about it. Rather than like, it would have been cool if like, all right, well, when you get your license or when you have your 17th birthday, now you get these privileges, but you also get the privilege and the honor of doing your own laundry too.
And I think that's one, Zach, if I can jump in, where it's really nice to do it together. And I think we often see, again, chores, not the best word, as being in the way of our fun, the stuff that we have to do before we can get to the stuff that we want to do. But I like to suggest to families that there's a huge opportunity for bonding, connection, and fun even in some of this work. And laundry is actually a great one to invite your kids in with you, even from a small age. Many little things that kids can do in the laundry room: separating darks and whites, spraying stains, folding towels, and matching socks afterwards. And you recognize, like, if you break it down like that, it's not so daunting, right?
Exactly. Yeah, folding rags, I think, was one of the first things that I learned how to do in terms of helping around the house and laundry. That's something really easy to teach your kids at a young age.
And now we're at the point where Tyson has a collection of like concert t-shirts that he really prizes. And it's really important to him that these are kept well. So he knows how to get stains out. He knows to spray the neck. He knows that I wash them inside out to protect the
screen print.
The screen print. Thank you. And so these are things that are not like just annoying tasks, but they're things that benefit him directly.
Yeah.
He sees that.
Now, when you were sharing the story of the insurance agent, the first thing that came to me was shame, because I think maybe when I was 28, probably before our child came, before I was a parent, I probably would have had the same mindset. Today, like riding a bike, like I can't unsee it. Like I get the, like, how ridiculous that would be, because I can see the invisible labor is so visible to me now. And like it probably took reading Fair Play. It probably took having a child and being on paternity leave for 12, almost 16 weeks for me to see and appreciate all the invisible labor. Tyson, when you were going through the process of learning invisible labor, I know mental load is much more of the thing that you guys talk about at home.
Yeah.
What do you think was one of the hardest learning curves that you went through that, like, and maybe Laura, you might know this one better, is like, what did you find yourself banging your head against the wall, like trying to get it through his head?
So I think for me, one of the hardest parts about learning about the mental load was definitely learning how to manage my schedule. She used to do the schedule managing, and especially at my age now, as I'm going through high school, as I'm starting high school, I'm starting to manage my own schedule. I'm starting to plan around my homework, soccer practices, appointments, stuff like that. So that's been probably one of the harder
Yeah. Even like
lessons.
setting your own alarm in the morning versus me waking you up,
Yeah,
right? Little,
waking up, even the little things around my schedule. It's been getting easier, it's been getting better as you keep working towards where you want to be. So yeah, that's what I'd say.
Lori, what do you think was one of the harder learning curves that it felt like getting through to him, that maybe it took a handful more fails than you had hoped for?
So this was actually, again, a skill that I needed to really work on. And it's been a huge revelation for me. And it's the fact that, like, even in our own family unit where we're so aligned and we have our agreements that sort of guide us on a daily basis, like, we are all wired so differently. And Tyson and I are so close, and we're also so different. And it was such a revelation for me to shift from, going into his room, which is a beautiful chaos. This is how he likes it. He's a very nostalgic person. He likes to have memories on every surface. He likes to look at the things that inspire him. He has old Legos that he built, like Pokemon cards that he was so lucky to find. Old projects that he did well on, like, they're really everywhere. And I think I used to go into his room and say, okay, time to put everything away, right? Like, time to clean up, because I, in my brain, like a clean surface. And I have really evolved to understand that does not honor him, and that what really matters is for him to have an environment that he thrives in, and to understand how to keep that environment as its best self. So to understand how to lift the Legos and to dust underneath them, right? And to know that if he has like a big box of hockey cards or football cards or whatever, that he shouldn't leave them in the middle so that someone's going to trip, or that, dust is going to get in it or whatever. So we now talk a lot about how he can have the environment that works for him, that he thrives in, and how to care for it that way. And that was like a shift and a learning for me, because it's not my ideal environment, but as long as it's safe and healthy for him, and he now remembers, right? Like, you will go get a dusting cloth and tidy your desk, right? But you still have like 4 empty boxes of, what do you call those guys? Funko Pops?
Funko Pops.
Where he wants them, right? So I don't go in anymore and say, dude, that's garbage, like, get rid of it. It's his space. He gets to take the lead, but he has a commitment, to the minimum standard of care, or even higher, right? Because we do talk about it a lot, for his own space.
Yes. How have you guys, so minimum standard of care, for those that don't know, is sort of a fair play term of identifying what the expectations are of any given operation or cleanliness around the home. It could go further into things outside of the home, but what do the conversations look like between the two of you? And Lori, I know that you coach a lot of other parents that have children and or teenagers to have these kind of conversations. What do they look like between the two of you, and or what kind of coaching do you offer to parents and or to the children around having these kind of conversations?
Well, Tyson, what are some of the most important things about your space that we talk about? Like, what are the zones that we really focus on in your room?
One of the zones that we really focus on is my bathroom. I would say, in the past, I've kept kind of a messy, kind of chaosy, like, bathroom, like she said. And hygiene is like one of the things that's gotten more and more important as I'm progressing through my life. So keeping a clean bathroom is really important.
On that note, do you want to talk about your bed sheets?
Oh yeah. So changing my bed sheets is another part of the invisible labor.
What's our frequency of changing your sheets, and why do we do it? What's so important about it?
Well, it's so important because it can help you. It can help with cleanliness, and changing like your pillow cases can also lead to like your skin being healthier, and that's really important.
Now, Tyson, I don't know if I'm picking up on this. I could be reading into this too much. You don't have to perform for me. So when I hear you say so important, I'm thinking in my head like, that's not important for me. I know for Alyssa, we probably have like a bi-weekly, maybe 1.5 to 2 times a month, I would say our bed sheets are getting changed, but I don't think that's a high priority for us. So like, do you feel like that? Or is that something that, your mom has talked about with you a lot and you've like actually adopted for yourself?
It's definitely important for me. And I think when I say that it has importance, I'm not saying like I have to change like my bed sheets like once a week. Like we probably do it.
We do once a week. Yeah.
We do
We do
do it once a week, actually.
But with two adolescent boys, like we are really
Yeah.
focused on clear skin, right?
Yeah.
We are really focused
Especially
on that and developing, like really talking out loud about developing hygiene stuff.
You guys keep bringing up shame for me. Not that long ago, since COVID, I would say part of my hygiene got worse, and feeling a lot of shame saying this in front of a teenager especially too. I just didn't shower as much as I was before, especially when I started having a work from home job where I wasn't around other people besides my wife all day and our kid. And so like I was a teacher for a while, so I didn't have teenagers that I was seeing every day and like having to look and or smell good for. So my hygiene it got worse. And there are multiple times when it took getting through my head when Alyssa would point at the difference between our pillows and noticing that my pillow had a significantly different color than hers for the difference in the amount of like hair washing that we were doing. And so it's good. I'm glad I don't have a visual because that'd be gross. I think especially if you're talking with students, because I know for a lot of teenagers like clear skin and dealing with acne, and I think I was lucky to not have too many challenges with it, but I know that's a huge thing for teenagers, especially developing confidence and being able to talk to your peers. That can be a source of shame for a lot of teenagers. For anyone that needs to poke at their teenagers to help them see the value of clear skin, and you point at the different color pillows, that could be useful.
I think
That was very useful for me.
The bigger theme, Zach, is that I really try to talk to my kids, not presenting them with like a chore chart or a list of to-dos without any context. What I share with a lot of people that I speak with or coach is like, if you can connect kids to the why behind all of these things that we feel that we have to do, and also the direct benefit to their own wellness, they're much more willing and engaged participants. And I think once they understand the impact of some of these tasks that without that context can be just like annoying, right? Changing a fitted sheet, I mean, we don't love that.
Not
But
really.
if you understand why it's important and how it benefits you, then, and also we're at this stage in my house where I'm even starting to talk to my kids about a time where they might start inviting other people into their space. And how do they want that person to feel? Mm-hmm. And that is emotional labor, right? And mental. And understanding like it's not just about me. At some point I'm going to have a friend over. At some point I'm going to be living on my own. I might invite a partner over. How will I think through those moments? Like, how will I prepare for those moments? And it's not necessarily about having flowers in a vase and like a charcuterie platter, right? It's just about making sure there's toilet paper in the bathroom.
Yeah.
I want to ask this next one because I think it could be a really good. I'm curious around the dynamic that the two of you have and how hearing it in real time for other people might make a difference. What is either one of the current or recent conversations you guys have had around minimum standards of care where you've disagreed?
That's so interesting.
That's a good question.
Disagree may not be the right word, but I think
it could be just like there was
where the
unidentified
execution
lie.
is not aligned according to the agreement. And
Yeah.
I think in the shared spaces of our home, in particular the kitchen, I do tend to suggest that a high standard is the right thing for our family, and everybody's very clear on what that looks like as far as dishes and, wiping the counter and if there's crumbs on the floor and kind of what we do. And I think you sometimes aren't as connected to that as, I think you intellectually understand what we're after, but sometimes you're sort of excited to move on to the next thing. If it's like you're focused on your homework or you're focused on getting ready for practice. So we're building that muscle.
Yeah, in the shared spaces in the home are like something that need good communication. And you will always agree, obviously, on how something needs to get done.
I don't know if that is obvious. I don't think necessarily. I think there's a lot of people that disagree on how things get. I think, for Tyson, I don't know how much you know about me, but I talk with a lot of guys, and I think a lot of guys, especially husbands and dads, there's a lot of moments where they disagree with their partners about how things should be. I would say for me and Alyssa, I would say one thing that we disagree on that I typically just kind of bend to what Alyssa wants is it doesn't feel to me like our toddler needs to change out of her pajamas necessarily if we're going to the grocery store on a Saturday morning. That is not important to me. I am okay with her hanging out in her pajamas. Totally. If Alyssa's there and she has something to say about it, she will say she's got to change. And I'm thinking I don't feel that need. Yeah. I get somewhat of her perspective. I also recognize that there's a double standard where if mom shows up to the grocery store with kids in PJs, she might get some mom shame, or she might have some internalized mom shame, like, oh, I'm a bad mom for doing this. Versus I know that the dads are getting pats on the back for showing up to the grocery store. For being at the grocery store. Yeah. Yeah. So I know for sure that there's differences in those things or the perception of how they're received from the public or from themselves. But I'm curious, so what do those, now it takes emotional labor to bring to your partner or to your kid or to your parent, like a slip in standard. What do those communications look like for the two of you when there's a slip in standard and Laura, you're bringing something to their attention? Is it really direct? I know some people have almost systems. I know I coach people to have boring meeting, which I just recently turned into an acronym, but that would be something that shows up in our weekly meeting. How do you guys have those conversations?
So I think what's really important, and you probably talk a lot about this when you're talking about fair play, right, is starting as a family with your agreements. And so when things don't go according to plan, you can revert back to, guys, we agreed to this, instead of, hey, this is, I'm telling you, or because I said so, right? And if you start from a place of what's important to us as a family, and again, in some spaces, people can, it's choose your own, right, adventure with support of others. And then in the shared spaces, you have to come to a consensus, really. And again, it's, if you don't agree, then there are ways of understanding sort of like public and communal standards for these kinds of spaces to keep them well and to protect your investments. But what's really important is that you start with an agreement, and that becomes your North Star. When something isn't done, you can go back and say, look, we agreed that when we're done eating, plates go in the sink and a little bit of water goes in them so that the food can start to loosen, whatever.
So logistically, when does that conversation happen? Let's say, a snack happens before he's headed to soccer practice. He totally forgets, leaves a dish out, leaves crumbs. Is that conversation happening when he gets home from practice? Is it happening on a weekly basis? And what does that show up like? Because I know that it takes emotional labor sometimes to catch someone in the right mood. And I know I was a moody teenager, and there was arguably a good time and a not great time for my mom to bring that to me. Mm-hmm. How do you guys navigate that?
Yeah, I think that's when it's really important to understand people's wirings, people's schedules, how stressed they are. If I know that Tyson is rushing off to something, like if soccer carpool is waiting downstairs, I'm not talking about the dish. If I know he has a big exam the next day and he's really worried about it or whatever, I'll talk about the dish after the exam as an example. But if he's going to take a shower or, going to DJ on his deck for a bit or whatever, it's happening in the moment. And so I think it's really important, and we talk about this with conversations between partners too. You don't need, unless it's a matter of safety, you don't need to have these conversations if the moment isn't right. If someone's tired or hungry, or if you're already in conflict, or if you can just feel you're not going to progress with it, save it. But I do think, and we're using like a dish isn't the most serious example, right? But because we're chatting about that, I think it is important just to say, the dishes, just remember, we agreed, the next time he's eating, I might say, just remember, when you're done, the deal is the dishes go in the sink.
Tyson, is there emotional labor that you appreciate your mom doing when it comes to coming to you at the right time, quote, or like, what's something that she does that you think more parents would benefit from doing the emotional labor of that really helps you be on the same page and like receptive to feedback?
Yeah, well, I think you mentioned you were like a moody teenager. I think finding the right time to talk to your kid and finding the right setting,
Well, but I want to be maybe a little bit more specific. So like, I know we can all say that it's ideal to find the right times, but what is your mom doing that you think where she's like, when's maybe an example where she clearly did a good job of like coming to you about it versus maybe a time where she did not hit it well and that turned into conflict?
You can totally say.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So there was this one time. Can I talk about like the toilet paper?
Sure. I don't know what this example is, but sure.
Oh, yeah. So there was one time where I was studying. I had 2 big tests the next day, and I just got off a break from studying, and my mom was in the kitchen.
Oh, I remember this now.
And she was making
paper towels.
Dinner. Yeah, she was making dinner, and I'd been studying for the whole night, and then she asked me to go grab a roll of paper towels, and I didn't know where they were, so I asked her where they were, and then I went and got them, and all of them like fell down from the cupboard, and I got really angry, and then that was maybe one example of like maybe a not as good of a time.
Yeah. Yep.
I feel like I'm missing a key plot piece as to where the anger was coming from.
So it probably wasn't the right time to engage him for support.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, I think because I was at the stove and I was cooking, I kind of yelled down the hallway for him to bring me paper towels from the back closet. But he was really in the middle of some important work, and he probably wanted to say, this is not the right time, like, to get me out of my zone and make me go look for paper towels. But he did it anyways. And then what happened was they were all kind of like at the top of the cupboard, and the whole thing came tumbling down. And it was just a tricky moment that we probably could have communicated like a little bit differently. But I think what's really important is even these little things, paper towels, like we will have a big conversation about that, and it's about the repair, and it's about, because the paper towels like falling down and him getting frustrated is really not about the paper towels. It's about the way we communicate. It's about expressing our needs. It's about having boundaries when we're like in a particular zone that we really feel like we need to stay in. And it was a learning experience for us about communicating and
finding the right time to talk.
Yeah. And also about you feeling comfortable to say, I don't actually know where those are, or like, I don't know how to get to them, versus always feeling like you have to just always do the thing in the moment, and you're not allowed to ask for support.
Or when you're talking with parents that are trying to implement this with their students, what are the common either misconceptions or like the hurdles that a lot of parents struggle with having these conversations?
So I think one of them is that this is about pawning work off onto kids, which is really It's quite the opposite, actually. There's a lot of research to suggest that involving kids in the work of the home really sets them up for thriving later in life. It impacts their self-esteem, it impacts their ability to deal with frustration, it helps them communicate and complete and take on tasks, and it really does impact their thriving in academic work and social relationships. This was the 75-year study done by Harvard. And so getting kids involved in care work and the work of the home is all about empowering them, setting them up for independence, connecting them to the wellness of the family, connecting them to gratitude. It's not about perfection, right? When I give my kids their clean clothes and their response for folding, I don't care how they're folded. I care that they are tackling the folding, because what happens then is they put it away, they know where it is, they know how to find it in the morning. And guess what? After folding your own laundry for a few weeks in a row, you do get better at it, you do care more about it, you do build that muscle. So it's not about like I have less work because I make my kids do it. It's really about an opportunity for your kids to thrive in this learning.
Yeah, it sounds like a huge part of that is like a context change of these are chores that need to be gotten done, and they're currently on my plate. So, and I don't want them to be on my plate, and I want them to be on your plate. And what you're shifting is like, this is another opportunity for a life skill, that it's not just about getting the work done, but it's the process and the journey of learning it, so that they don't have learned helplessness along the way, and or that they don't have a terrible context of like, this is garbage, not fun work. Like, can't we just hire this out? I just don't want to do it.
And I want my kids to succeed in this. And so what I think is really important is that you understand what your kids are able to tackle, what they have the capacity to take on, and what they're going to enjoy and be able to complete. So Tyson is really into music. So he does a lot of the stuff around the house where he can wear his headphones and listen to music. He unloads the dishwasher listening to music. He will vacuum listening to music. My younger son does a lot of the laundry folding because he likes to watch Premier League soccer highlights while he's folding. And why wouldn't I want them to, enjoy, right? And partner the task with something that like it becomes meditative, right? When they do that. And Tyson and I were talking about this example a while ago. I asked him, would he make a video for me of him emptying the dishwasher? Because I kind of like to show on my Instagram from time to time kids involved. And he said to me, I unloaded it so fast while I was videoing that I didn't have enough footage. So I literally had to load it back up again so that I could unload it again to get enough for the video. And the message being, it's actually not as hard as you think. It's not as daunting as you think. And again, you were listening to Little Tekka, right? You're listening to like a new drop of some music. It doesn't feel heavy, especially when everyone from the family is in on it.
I just want to call it to the parents right there. What we just heard in real time, I think, in my opinion, is we heard emotional labor from Lori for her child of like knowing the artist of some of the music that just dropped. I think I'm imagining, Tyson, you just got some like identity and feeling heard that like she knows your artist. Like I remember there are moments where I think the difference between my mom and my dad, I love you both. My mom knows the first and last names of all my good friends. She knew the albums I was listening to. She knew the sports I was caring about. She probably knew a couple of the athletes that I cared about. My dad would often ask, wait, who are we talking about? Who's that person? And I think that made me feel consistently closer to my mom, I think, because she was, whether it was laborious or not, she was choosing to take some time to remember some of those things for me.
So interesting and beautiful.
So that's like it sounds like that's one of the big hurdles that you have to overcome with a lot of parents, is shifting it from learning a life skill rather than offloading a chore and just getting a task completed and delegated.
Yep.
Is there a close second, or is there another like big hurdle that you often have to deal with?
Right. So then the other one is, I think often parents feel that they want to protect their kids from the weight of this work, right? And so what I hear very often with little ones is, oh, but they're only little ones, they should play, let them play. But I think having a little one, that number one, kids just really want to be with us, right? They want to be connected to important things. They want to feel proud, right? And so it's so funny that we will buy the kids the plastic kitchen, and the plastic doll with the baby stroller, but we will hesitate to bring them into like the real kitchen and involve them, or take them, involve them in food procurement or food preparation, which I actually used to work for a food company, and there's a lot of research to show that involving kids in food prep will make them more eager eaters, and more welcoming of broad tastes. And so that's with little ones. And then parents of older kids are really trying to protect their kids because there are so many pressures at that age of academics, athletics, building your resume for college. They really need to focus their time on that. I'm not going to distract them or expect them to do anything beyond that. But then what I'll say is, well, I do understand the pressures of that life stage, but holistic parenting requires us to prepare our kids for the night before the exam when they need to find a nourishing meal, right? Or the big date when they're inviting someone over and they want to have clean sheets. Like, we have to prepare them for these life moments. And they need to be able to do their own laundry in college and understand, so they don't put 3 scoops of soap and all these little moments that end up later on either being stressful moments or moments of real security and pride.
Tyson, what would you say have been some of the things? Have you had to have a shift in how you see a lot of these domestic labor chores, and what has that learning curve looked like for you? And do you remember any ahas or moments where it kind of clicked for you that these are more life skills that are preparing me, and these are just contributions to the home rather than, ew, gross, I have work to do?
Yeah, well, I think one of the important things that has helped me go from framing it as a chore to framing it as something that can help me, or something that I can do to help other people. I get, a sense of satisfaction when I help people, or even when I help myself. So for example, when I'm making my bed, I'm gonna realize when I come back home from school, I'm gonna have a clean bed, or I'm gonna have a clean room to study in. And I think putting the outcome in my head before I do these tasks, instead of dreading them, is something that's really helped me with like you said, the learning curve of how to do the.
Yeah, so it almost sounds like visualizing outcomes. I mean, you could apply that to a lot of things too, like getting an A on the test, and I can imagine that manifesting itself, and you're going to study harder when you're visualizing getting an A, and the joy that comes with getting that back and knowing you worked hard for it.
And that helps with the studying as well before. And then when I'm studying, I can be if I do well on this test, then the weekend after, I can hang out with my friends, because, I'm not going to have to study even more or something like that. Just realizing that if you work hard at getting these things done, or if you work hard at getting these things done, then it'll just lead to a better future for you.
Getting back to your bed, I think what Tyson has come to realize is that he does not make his bed because he cares that his bed is made. That's not what it's about. That's not what it's about for him. But he recognizes that he studies better when his room is sorted, when his space is organized. If his space isn't organized, the clutter of the space becomes the clutter in his mind.
That often leads to procrastination for me as well, which is a big thing, and cleaning my room can help me focus. And it's just a whole trickle effect. I make my bed, and then I have a clean space to study. I do well on the tests, and then I can enjoy my week.
So you're inspiring me to clean my office more right now.
He does not make his bed every day. And I've stopped requesting or requiring that because it's not a part of a morning routine that he thrives in.
Most days I do it.
Some days you do.
Most.
But I don't require it. And I also don't go in and do it. When he's off to school, his room stays how it is. But he always makes his bed before he starts studying for a test. He might make his bed at 7:30 at night, because that is the first step into him getting into a zone. And it's just interesting to see what works for him. And in his own space, he gets to do what works for him.
Man, that is a life skill that I feel like even I struggle with, is understanding and recognizing how much my space like impacts how I'm able to think and do work. I'm looking around at my desk and just feeling a bit of shame about it. The clothes and stuff that are around my feet. I love that you have that awareness for like what your, I want to call it like emotional needs are, but it's almost like an aura of the space that you're in almost.
Yes, that's a
And
great word for it.
I want to, I don't know if it's shift gears, but I want to build off this. And so you're seeing the impact that the domestic labor has within your space, Tyson.
Yeah, for sure.
And you've obviously been, looking at and articulating mental load with your mom probably more than most teenagers in anywhere in the world.
Hopefully that can change, though.
Amen. I made a video recently talking about how I recognized where I was holding mental load while I was playing basketball with a couple of people around my neighborhood, and just keeping the score, and like how that kind of unfolded and how it was annoying, and how noticing the games where I hold the mental load of keeping score when we're playing, 3-on-3 versus like if it's very random and like no one's seemingly keeping score, we have to stop every 5 minutes to like count up the numbers. Where do you see mental load show up with your peers, with your colleagues? Because I think like that moment right there, like I can recall there were people I didn't want to play with because I'm like, oh, I'm going to have to like think for them. Like they might even be good at the game, but I don't want them on my team because I have to like think, and like maybe I'll have to do the emotional labor of when they get heated. I'm the one that has to like dap them up and remind them that like they're still a good player. What is some of that invisible labor that you see either on the playing field, in school?
Well, you just used the athletic example, so that resonates with me as well because I'm a soccer player, and when I'm playing my games, part of the mental load is just knowing the needs of my teammates, where they are, how they need to be supported. For example, if one of my teammates misses a chance, then I'm going to go over and be like, keep your head up, or like, you get it next time, something like that. That's definitely a huge part of that. And also I think the emotional load within friendships is something that especially I haven't heard talked about as a kid as much as I think it needs to be. The emotional load within friendships can be pretty like heavy sometimes, I think, especially when you're like making plans. For example, if someone has a birthday party and one of the people in the group isn't invited, then that can be really like mentally challenging. Or if you're working out a beef between your friends or even someone in school, I think
are you the, knowing yourself, and you can just name them with initials or something, who's the person in your circle that does the most emotional labor for like kin keeping of the friendships?
I think I would definitely put myself up there. I mean, I really try to, I think my friends have definitely had less exposure to even this term mental load. So I keep the term in my head, especially lately, and I would say I'm the person that just tries to keep everyone's emotions intact, make sure everyone feels included. And I think it would be great if like my friends would like do a bit more of that. But I think that's something I've been taking on a bit.
So I have a specific way that I try to spread the word of invisible labor out there. Like when I'm, showing up in my day-to-day, I'm curious if, like, I know you just said, like, hopefully this isn't a big issue and that more people do learn it. Are there ways that you almost tactically include the word mental load in conversations, or are there ways that you are maybe strategically introducing the concept of mental load to, the people in your circles?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, going back to what I previously said about including everyone. Let's say I'm with a friend and they have like a list of the people who they're inviting to their birthday party. I wouldn't say I do a good job of using the word mental load. Maybe in the future.
But the concept.
Yeah, the concept I think is something I try to include. Going back to my example, I'm with a friend and they're planning a list of who they're inviting to their birthday party. I'm trying to help them make sure, let's say they disclude this person off the list, and I'm like, oh, how do you think they would feel if you didn't invite them? Or how do you think this person would feel if their friend wasn't there? And putting these ideas in their mind, putting some possible outcomes in their mind, usually like more negative outcomes of what could happen if you don't think about the emotional load. I think that's important.
Yeah, that's hard work to do right there, because I think it takes a certain level of trust to have with your friends, especially like in high school, because I think there's a lot of friends that can be a little bit more on the fickle side, because I know my experience was that in high school, like you're constantly battling to like maybe not be popular, but like to have decent relationships with people that had either a vested interest in your social status or like a disinterest in your social status.
Yeah.
I know that one of the ways that I do, I'm gonna challenge you, Tyson, to do is I challenge you either on a weekly or a daily basis, if you want to go hard, just finding an opportunity to use the word mental load or like emotional labor. Because I think that when you start dropping those words into conversations, people are forced to reckon with, I don't know what that means. That like there was a word earlier you said, Lori, I think it was, I remember you made this motion with it. It was a word that I had not heard in conversation before. And I had to either figure out the context clues of like, what did she just say? Or I came close to directly asking, I don't know what word it sounded like a fruit, but I know it was not, I know it was not a fruit that you were using.
We'll have to rewind the tape.
I think it started with a P. Either way, like, in that moment, I'm doing the mental load, emotional labor of like, is that an important word enough for me to ask what it is? I'm forcing myself to either adopt, like if I hear that phrase enough, I'm going to start adopting it. And or especially, I think a great way also is if you can acknowledge people with it. So when you see one of your friends like putting together their list, like, oof, that's a lot of emotional labor over there. Glad you're doing it. I'm not doing it. Because then they're like, I'm doing emotional labor. That's cool that I'm being, maybe not cool that I'm doing it, but cool that I'm being acknowledged for it. This is something hard. I think similar, like if you're talking with coach, you're talking with one of your colleagues on the soccer field, and they're like clearly thinking through some things, and they're like, hey, can I, like they're asking you questions like, wow, you're doing a lot of mental load over there. I'm glad I'm not doing that. Like, good work. I think acknowledgement is like the easiest way to insert it into conversations and to have people feel valued for it, and like it's not like a weapon to them, but it's like, it's something that they're being acknowledged for.
I think this concept of acknowledgement is such a huge one, Zach, and I'm really glad that you brought it up.
That's how you started, right? When you weren't acknowledged for being a quote unquote stay-at-home mom, that kind of sparked.
That's exactly it, Tyson. And it's like this concept of what is not visible is not valued. And Zach, I think that this concept of acknowledging emotional labor is like a huge opportunity, especially as Tyson was saying, like among their peers, where like it takes a lot of courage for sure, right, to extend yourself into language like that. But I think it's like it could be huge, right? Or even just as Tyson does a lot, I think even just modeling it as a concept, if you don't get all the way to talking about the specific words, but I think again, being that person in your friend group that does show up with an emotional quotient that is like really meaningful and facilitating your relationships. But I want to talk, if I can, Zach, about acknowledgement, even in the home. When you're talking to kids about their role and their participation, it's hugely meaningful to acknowledge. But what I encourage parents to do is take a step beyond just a simple thank you. I think when we say thank you, the implication is that like a kid has done the parent, very often the mom, like a favor, like it's my work and you did a little bit of my work. And it usually ends there with the thank you. But what I think is so much more impactful is when you acknowledge either the skill that the child exhibited or the specific impact that the child had, the benefit maybe that was even felt by you in a meaningful way. And so instead of saying to Tyson after he does like say the vacuuming, I could just say thank you, which I mean, I think is nice. Like I'm not suggesting it's not an important thing to do, or I could say, oh my gosh, you did such a fantastic job. Like there were so many crumbs over here and now I don't see any. That's amazing. That used to take you 20 minutes. You just did it in 10. How cool is that? Right? Or, it's really meaningful that I can trust you with this. Like I used to worry about like you maybe scratching the floor. I don't worry at all about that anymore. I can see that you've built your skill and that means a lot to me because I can leave the room and I know that you're going to do a great job. Or, it's so awesome that you did the vacuuming. I felt like I was going to have to do it, but since you did it, I read my book for half an hour. So just like a more contextualized, like powerful reflection of impact versus just the 2 words of thank you, which really end there.
Yeah, that is some potent emotional labor right there. Which reminds me, I know there was a moment.
Back, though.
Yeah, I remember there was a moment where I confronted my mom when I think I was either a teenager, maybe in college, but I remember, she was definitely a feminist and was definitely teaching me, like probably talking about how to treat women or something. But I remember there was a handful of times in a row where I was sharing with her something that I felt like I did was good. Like I was looking for, I don't know if I was fishing for compliments, but I was looking for validation. And I know just like the words that she used, she was like, oh, good. Felt like a validation that I was like completing on an objective or like a goal that she wanted. And I remember at some point, I didn't know how to articulate it. And I said, hey, Mom, can I talk to you about something? Like the way that you respond to these things, I probably didn't have very articulate words for it then, but I wasn't feeling like I was being acknowledged for something that I was doing with my own free will, but something that like I was completing that was like her concept, her idea. And so I think to build on like what you're doing there, I think when we can be encouraging and being a safe space for our teenagers to give us feedback on how we're giving them feedback.
Yeah.
I think that was real. Like, I remember when she responded to that, she was so receptive. And I was so grateful that she was really receptive to it that I think since then I remember it's been rare that I've not been able to come to her giving her some feedback and have a good feeling that it was going to be well received. Maybe a couple months ago, I'm just going to share it because I know it's vulnerable and I know that it's good. So I've had a really bad habit still in adulthood of picking my nose. Still a bad habit. It's something that it's persisted far too long. And I remember sharing with my mom that like I was working on not doing it. Like I was truly, I think it was like I was on a podcast or something and I like crept up and I was super embarrassed. And I was sharing with her like, this is one of the things I'm trying to do. And she's like, you're still doing that? And I was in so much pain because I was trying to be vulnerable and sharing that I was trying to make better choices for my life. And I remember giving her the feedback, like I felt really, really hurt when that was received with like, you're an idiot for never changing, rather than like the experience of like, good for you, Zach. Like, I know it's probably really hard to admit at that age. So yeah, I think being able to give our parents feedback and know that it's going to be received with a decent level of reception is so important, I think, for us to continue building relationships with our kids and
100%.
be able to introduce these kind of things.
And also, like, even if she didn't quite meet you where you wanted and needed to be met in the moment, just for her to recognize there's an opportunity to come back to you, right? And I think this is something that we work on a lot, right, Ty? Like, repair is such a huge opportunity because we so often don't get it right in the moment. But the real opportunity is to come back to each other. Like, how often do I come to you and say, can I tell you something? I did not handle that the way that I wish that I would have.
Quite a bit, actually.
Right?
Yeah.
And can I explain to you why I didn't? Right? Can I assure you that it actually has nothing to do with you or what you did in the moment, but like something that I felt or something that I remembered or something that crept back in for me. And I'm really sorry that it ended up impacting you in that moment because it was really about me and like I want to like rebuild the bridge with you.
Yeah, I think it's definitely hard for some parents to admit their like mistakes, or if they talk to their kid in a way that they regret, or they respond to their kid's actions in a way that they didn't think was appropriate, then maybe hard for them to admit, because
For sure it
usually
is.
the parents are the people that are supposed to be teaching their kids, and they're supposed to be the role models and the examples, and the kids are supposed to learn from them. But parents are obviously not always perfect. So as a kid, just coming from that perspective, it feels really good when your parents can come back to you and admit that maybe they handled the situation not in the best way that they could have. Coming from that perspective, it feels really good, and it's really helpful for the process of mending and healing something that could have just gone wrong.
And then I find you're more interested in coming to me in that same way, right? When you didn't handle something that you wished in the moment.
It makes it easier for me as well.
Yeah.
So I know we're coming up on time, and I wanted to ask, so Lori, I've had the privilege of getting to work alongside with you with a couple of clients. What are some of the offerings that you put out? And if people wanted to work with you, who are the typical types of people that you're working with, and what are their typical challenges?
So I like to say that I'm like WD-40 for families. I help them get unstuck by suggesting new systems, new language, right, to really facilitate the flow, right, their daily flow. And I love working with families that have children, of course, because this is a topic that I'm really entrenched in. But really, I'm interested in working with anybody who's looking to reduce the stress that is caused by inequity in their home. And what we do in our work is really, it's like so much less about talking about work and division of labor and starting there, but really starting from a point of, do you have equal joy? Do you have equal rest? Do you have equal time for creative, athletic pursuits and the things that make you that person who you are actually outside of your role as a parent, a partner, and a professional? And it's such a refreshing perspective for so many people, and it's really like such a motivating place to start. And we talk a lot about language. We obviously talk a lot about the fair play system as a foundation for finding that North Star and those agreements for your families. But I really love it. And I also do a lot of corporate speaking and speaking with, women's groups. And I love speaking with students as well. So can really tailor the topic to whoever the audience is. And I do a lot with my book as well. I really love showing up at schools and at bookstores to share this sort of repositioning of chores into gratitude, and really helping families understand how powerful connecting on this work can be to their wellness. It has become such a passion of mine. I'm really grateful for the opportunity.
Well, Lori and Tyson, thank you guys so much for coming today. It's been really fun talking with both of you. I wasn't necessarily expecting I was going to get to talk with Tyson the whole time, so this was really interesting getting to talk with a invisible labor literate teenager for the last hour or so. So thank you two for coming. Looking forward to more to come.
Thanks so much for inviting us. It was so great. Well done, Ty.
Thank you.